I'm gonna read my book.
Whenever it's open. Divine blessings, blessings. All right, beautiful people. Happy Tuesday. It is May the 10th, 2022. Day 104 of year 4 of reading through the books of the law and prophets under the 4-year consecutive day count, day 1122. Today we're going to read Oahspe starting on page 78 in chapter 14. And then when we get done today, y'all willing, we'll head on over to the meditation book on page 114, where we left off at on Saturday. Yeah, because we weren't here Sunday. We didn't get to it yesterday. Yeah, so Saturday where we left off at. All right, y'all. So let's get started. Father, we thank you for another day as we search for truth with our light that we have. Mom, shalom, shalom. All right, chapter 14, page 78 of the Oahspe. The voice of Jehovah came to God, saying, Behold, the time draweth near when my son, shall commit the care of Horeb and her affairs to another God for another 400 years. This then is the commandment of thy Creator, O God. Horeb shall advance to the second resurrection, but the first resurrection shall be established with my lords. And when the Lord hath a sufficient number of souls who are advanced to take the second resurrection, then they shall be brought to this, my holy place, where they shall be further prepared for the next resurrection. Going from glory to glory, like we call it in the Christian church, right? This was accomplished, and the heavenly kingdoms with thrones for the lords for the first resurrection were established on the earth, and in the divisions of the lords, so that there were allotted to these lords kingdoms 33 years for a resurrection, because 33 is the division of Dan, corresponding to the 100 Dans of each cycle. Now, does that sound familiar or does that not sound familiar? 33 years. Let me read it again. Let me see if y'all caught on. Verse 3. This was accomplished, and heavenly kingdoms with thrones for the lords for the first resurrection were established on the earth, and in the divisions of the lords, so that there were allotted to these lords kingdoms 33 years for a resurrection, because 33 is the division of Dan, corresponding to 100 Dans to each cycle. I'll let that marinate. I'm going to just read the footnote F that follows it, that says 33 years is one generation or mortal Dan. 3,300 years is one cycle or Dan of Earth's life. This was the old way of counting, but 3 times 33 is not 100, nor is 30 times 100, 3,300. Still, there is this correspondence. If a Dan or grand cycle of the earth is 3,300 years, then the generations of men are said to be 33 years. But if a Dan or a grand cycle of the earth is 33,000 years, then a generation of men will be 30 years. Edition 1891. I'll keep on reading. I'll just let y'all think about that for a little while. Shayla, hey girl, hey. Verse 4, chapter 14, page 78. Accordingly, every 33 years thereafter, there was one migration of a group from the Lord's first resurrection to that of Horeb, which was God's second resurrection, whereby the light of Dan fell on 200 years, 400 years, 500 years, 600 years, and 1,000 years, which became the base of prophecy for each cycle from that time forth for a long period, right? So we are really familiar with the 33 years, right? Everybody, at least that come from the church background, is familiar with that 33 years. When you switch over into the Hebrew roots, we get familiar with the 400 years, don't we? Mm-hmm. Oh, also in the Christian realm, we're also familiar with that 1,000 year, right? I read it again. Let's go back up. Verse 2. And when the Lord hath a sufficient number of souls who are advanced to take the second resurrection, then shall they be brought to this, my holy place, where they shall be further prepared for the next resurrection. This was accomplished, and heavenly kingdoms with thrones for the lords for the first resurrection were established on the earth, and in the divisions of the lords, so that there were allotted to these lords kingdoms 33 years for a resurrection, because 33 is the division of Dan, corresponding to 100 Dans each cycle. Accordingly, every 33 years thereafter was one migration of a group from the Lord's first resurrection to that of Horeb, which was God's second resurrection, whereby the light of Dan fell on 200 years, 400 years, 500 years, 600 years, and 1,000 years, which became the base of prophecy for each cycle from that time forth for a long period. God said, close the gates of Horeb, and from this time ever after, only those of the second resurrection can enter. And it was so. And Horeb was extended over Japheth, Shem, and Ham to the second degree. But of Gautama, this is the manner of her heaven. The Lord made two kingdoms, the first and the second resurrections, and allotted the first to a proxy in his own name. But over the second, he presided in person, teaching his people by proxy of God and Horeb. For the distance of the sea lay between these heavens, and the access could not be made in diminutive light of 33. Nevertheless, the Lord and his attendants maintained an Etherian ship that enabled him to cross the sea at intervals of 11 years. Accordingly, now, in the second resurrection, new colleges were established in heaven, and the spirits began the study of elements and illustrations in S and U's in the process of travel and of carrying corporal entities. And these spirits were at times under ashars, taken down to mortals to assist in miracles and legerdemain. For the lessons in the second resurrection embrace the mastery of corpore in analysis and synthesis. After the first year, remember, let's go back a couple verses. Remember, um, Gautama is what? Anybody know what portion of the world is named Gautama? Right? Auntie Blissful Rising. Uncle JB, Grand Rising and Shalom. Oh, great spirit. Good day, peace, and blessings to you as well. To you all as well. What is Gautama? The landmass on the earth. What is Gautama, y'all? It has a couple different names. It also has the name Thuri. Dirt, 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 dirt. Darn it. Thank you, Kimble Mac. Maybe your radio's keys froze up, maybe? Okay. All right, yes, America. Okay, just make sure you're keeping all that in mind. Let me just go back. Verse 5. God said, close the gates of Horeb, and from this time ever after, only those of the second resurrection can enter. And it was so. So Horeb was extended over Japheth, Shem, and Ham to the second degree, but of Americas. This is the manner of her heaven. The Lord made two kingdoms, the first and second resurrections, and allotted the first to a proxy in his own name. But over the second, he presided in person, teaching his people by proxy of God in Horeb. For the distance of the sea lay between these heavens, and the access could not be made in the diminutive light of 33. Nevertheless, the Lord and his attendants maintained an Etherian ship that enabled him to cross the sea at intervals of 11 years. Accordingly, now, in the second resurrection, new colleges were established in heaven, and the spirits began the study of elements and illustrations in S and Us, and the process of travel and of carrying corporal entities. And these spirits were at times under Ashars, taken down to mortals to assist in miracles and legerdemain. The lessons in the second resurrection embrace the mastery of corpore in analysis and synthesis. After the first year of God in Huatan, he went therefore every 11th year and remained 1 year of the earth's time, so that in 200 years he made 18 visits. Now, on his first visit, he brought back with him a certain number of volunteers, being of those raised by the Ark of Noah, which we know in Christendom is Noah, right? By the Ark of Noah, and the next visit, he brought back twice as many as the first, and the next 3 times as many as the second, and increasing for 18 visits. And on the last visit, it was estimated how many he had brought back in all. And the number was 1,000 million. And they were raised to the second resurrection, having been under the training of the gods and goddesses of Huatan, under the direction of Af, son of Jehovah. And now that the time of Dan was drawing near, and Av should return to provide for the ascent of Jehovah's harvest, God looked up with a cheerful heart, for it was evident that by the expiration of 200 years from the submersion of Pan, many of the spirits delivered from the earth in that day would be prepared to take the second resurrection. Wherefore God prophesied, saying, through thee, O Jehovah, in another 100 years, I shall have delivered them into Ethera or Nirvana as thy brides and bridegrooms. Chapter 15. Jehovah spake in the light of the throne of God in Horeb, saying, behold, a star cometh. The voice ceased, but God and his host knew the meaning, for it was the time of Af to return and complete his deliverance of Neph and his hosts and his lords and their hosts. So the council were moved to look into the firmament, and the messengers who had heard the voice and who were departing on their various missions also looked upward, even as they sped forth to their places, and they proclaimed it in the places of all the heavens of the earth, and to the lords and their divisions of the earth, and the angels of heaven, and those that abode with mortals were stirred up, and because of their contiguity, hold on, contiguity, is contiguity, yeah, Contiguity. I was on the road with my reading too, right? Sounding all proper. At least I thought so in my head. Let me start over. Contiguity. Contiguity. Okay, let me start the verse over. And the angels of heaven and those that abode with mortals were stirred up. And because of their contiguity to mortals, the latter comprehended that something unusual was near at hand. The council of Horeb knew not how they should proceed, for the event was to surpass in magnificence anything they had ever witnessed. God said, I have heard thy voice, O Jehovah. I know a star cometh, and great shall be the glory thereof. Give me light, O Father. How shall thy servant know the decorum of Orion priests? Behold, I am as one abashed with obscurity in thy wide universe. Jehovah's voice answered, saying, fear not, my son, and let thy counsel be strong also. Proceed at once to decorate thy people, preparatory to receiving the resurrection. And those who are to be my brides and bridegrooms, clothe ye in white. The whole council heard Jehovah's voice, and they ordained officers to proceed throughout atmosphere and put in effect Jehovah's commandment. And the decorated angels and those prepared as brides and bridegrooms for Ethera were ordered to form in companies near the throne of God in Horeb, and the officers of companies were also provided with badges whereon was inscribed an account of their labor on earth and in heaven, the number and nature of their charities and self sacrifices for others' good, and their grade in purity and power and wisdom. And the privates were decorated with stars to illustrate the same things in degree and number, and stations of their file and horrid were provided in the order of music, rating them according to their chord and discord and their social adaptability. It's about to be graduation time again, right? For these things were done before Etherian judges, whom Jehovah had said, let the people pass before you and judge ye them, that being assorted and arranged, they shall make one harmonious whole. For it is only by this they will have power to ascend and endure in my regions of light. There were, excuse me, there were 1,000,000 of these judges, and they took up their stations in different parts of Atmosphere, wherever the second resurrection had been established, every judge choosing a district for himself or herself, for they were both men and women. And as the angels passed before them, the wisdom of the judges was so great they could comprehend all they had ever done, either on earth or in heaven. And by signals, the proper officers were advised how to decorate and adorn all of them. And as fast as companies of 1,000 passed, they were provided with conductors who took them to their places, which had been previously determined by the command of God. Whilst this work was proceeding, lights began to appear in the firmament above. These were the marshals of the Orion fields in Etheria, in their starships making course for Horeb, and their number was legion. But presently, one brighter and one I'm sorry, but presently one brighter and more powerful than the rest made way from the western arc of Onayi, and it steered direct to God's throne, growing brighter and larger as it came. And when it entered past Chindat and and was well within the vortex of the earth in the belt of the moon's orbit, its light spread across the whole atmosphere of heaven, and Horrid was illumined, and the angels of Horrid were stirred up with enthusiasm. Not long, am I pausing on YouTube? It's good. Okay, okay, I'm gonna keep going. Not long the brilliant star delayed the suspense of the angel world, for he who sailed them was a God of millions of years, and by his wisdom attained to such mastery that the elements of earth and atmosphere gave way as if appalled by a heaven on fire. That's so good. He did good in his training. Listen, not long the brilliant star delayed the suspense of the angel world, and he who sailed them was a God of millions of years, and by his wisdom attained to such mastery, that the elements of earth and atmosphere gave way as if appalled by a heaven on fire. Down came the starship whose majesty outweighed all ceremony, a very crown of magnificence, even to the arena of the council of Horeb. And he who came, attended by 500,000, was Suji, marshal for that which was soon to follow. God rose up, saluting, and all the hosts rose up, whereupon Suji ascended the throne by the council near at hand. Suji said, by thy will, O Jehovah. And God said, in thy name, O Father, Creator, welcome to thy son. And presently all the place was aglow with a golden light, which ranks first in heaven of all colors. And the voice of Jehovah descended on Suji, and he said, well beloved, come, long enduring, come, of patience and steadfastness, my sons and daughters. Behold, I came in the darkness and delivered me, for she, me, am I, and delivered me, for she was of twins heavily laden. And the one dwelt with the mother, but the other I sent to nurse in Huatam, and they are grown to maturity, a son and a daughter twin. Turn ye to Huatam, lo, the twin cometh. She was the puny child, but look ye upon her, O ye gods and goddesses. Her thousand millions come as an avalanche of Jaian worlds. Open your arms, O my beloved sons and daughters. The voice ceased, and Suji said, when the harvest of Huatan arriveth, attended by the gods and goddesses who helped her deliver the children of darkness, and who have changed them into beacons of light, behold ye, there shall be of 3 days of recreation in atmosphere, for the hosts of Huatan shall be shown their native world, whence they came, and they shall read the lineage, of kin and condition, whence they were rescued by Jehovah's sons and daughters. But on the first day, behold, Af the Orion chief will descend in all his glory. And on the fourth day, all your upraised sons and daughters shall ascend into the Ethereal worlds, where there are in waiting to receive you millions of souls, long since dwellers in nirvana. Suji ceased speaking, having given commands as to the stations of his marshals around about the earth and her heaven. Let me just point out something. We talked about it before, but I like how this doesn't just use one term to encompass everybody, like son, like the Bible does, right? It constantly calls out the sons and the daughters alike, right? To whereas Christianity and the Bible completely scrubs all the women away. And the accounts that they did leave still look like we're wanting in some form and fashion, right? Verse 20, God sent his messengers, saying, go ye to Wakha and say, God saith, my heavens have been numbered, and the account of my laborers rendered and recorded in the libraries of Horeb, and all of the hosts who have labored with thy God. Behold, thou, O Wakha, standeth on the highest grade. Come therefore to the throne of thy God, and be anointed, God of heaven and earth, for the next 400 years, and as long as Jehovah willeth. The messengers, attended by 1,000 marshals, departed for Ajun, the place of labor where Waka dwelt, being a physician's nurse for Esians and stillborn mortal children and those killed by abortion. Mm. I know I gotta take my notes along the way. I'll read that verse again for y'all. Verse 21, page 80. The messengers, attended by 1,000 marshals, departed for Ajun, the place of labor where Waka is spelled W-A-K apostrophe H-A-A, the place of labor where Waka dwelt, being a physician's nurse for Esians and stillborn mortal children and those killed by abortion. And they delivered the message of God, to which Waka replied, thanks, O Jehovah. Tell God I will come. But yet let me surmise, I have been all my life, now some 30,000 earth years, trying to learn where I should be most serviceable to Jehovah and his sons and daughters. And when I judge that I have found it, lo, a summons cometh from another way, saying, come thou hither. Wherefore it seemeth Jehovah forever hurrieth us onward, faster than our wisdom can discover the requirement. That's good. And when I judge that I have found it, lo, a summons cometh from another way, saying, Come thou hither. Wherefore it seemeth Jehovah forever hurrieth us onward faster than our wisdom can discover the requirement. So the marshals provided an otivan, and Waka was conducted before Horeb, even to the foot of the throne of God, where he was saluted and received under a rod with water according to his rank. We have 25 minutes. Okay. This is his last bit. We might as well just go ahead and finish this book off today. Okay. We're gonna go a little bit over the 30-minute mark, and then we'll pick up. We'll get the rest of the time with the meditation, but we'll finish this, the last two chapters. Chapter 16. Nearer and nearer came the visiting stars, the Etherian ships from thousands of worlds, with countless millions of emancipated souls, dwellers in Nirvanian regions of Jehovah. And when they reached the boundaries of the earth's vortex, they halted a while to form in rank, that their glory might add to one another. And whilst they stood thus in the great vault of heaven, there opened on one side a gateway amidst the stars, and far beyond came a strange mottled sun swaying to and fro, and this was the great fields and forests of Huatan, letting loose the thousands of millions delivered of the earth. God and his host saw it, and every soul burst forth one universal shout of applause. It was coming straight to Horeb, and as it came nearer, the curtains and sails and streamers made of yellow, blue, and red fire began to wave and surge like a ship in a rough sea, but steadily holding course in the undulating elements. Presently could be seen guardian ships, thousands and thousands traveling beside the laboring sun, the host of Huatan. And the guardian ships were themselves like stars and carried millions of Etherian souls who had been gods and goddesses on many worlds.
Say that again.
And the guardian ships were themselves like stars and carried millions of Etherian souls who had been gods and goddesses on many worlds. And they formed the wings for Huatan, and they formed wings for the Huatan avalanche to hold steady the course to the red star, the earth of mortals. Remember, the earth is called the red star. And thus, in honored discipline, came the fleet of Jehovah's worshippers who, only 200 years since, were but as vermin delving into darkness and deep buried in death, as their only knowledge, to whom great Jehovah and his exalted worlds were unknown. So all those who leave this place in that state get to go to Huatan, right? And in Huatan, they are purged of all that evil so that they become bright, shining stars and lights for the world, right? So nobody's left in a degraded state. Where you leave this earth at will determine where you go, what school you need to go to, right? Okay. Brighter and brighter grew the great waving sun, sailed by the immortal gods, and larger and more imposing, till when it entered the earth's vortex, it became as a living fire, large as the earth, and of brilliant colors, from black to adamant and blue and white and purple and yellow, scarlet pink, and of all shades, and living.
What color was it?
Hold on.
I'm joking.
Oh. All right, babe. Black and adamant. That was the color. All right. Well, I'm locking the door like we live in the ghetto. Put on all the 50 locks. Oh. But I do use this guard dog. Hey, Tootie. All right. Verse 4, I read again. Brighter and brighter grew that great waving sun, sailed by the immortal gods, and larger and more imposing till when it entered the earth's vortex, it became as living fire, large as the earth, and of brilliant colors, from black to adamant, and blue and white, and purple, yellow, scarlet, pink, and of all shades, and living and sparkling with the broad curtain suspended deep as the breadth of a world, and sails and flags that reached upward high as the moon. Midway in the vortex of the earth, it halted, and the myriads of stars beyond now gathered in majestically from every side till nearly around about the to, till nearly around about the fabric of the earth's atmosphere was not a place, but glowed with Jehovah's fire of heaven. Music, which rose from the throne of God a little while before, now ceased, for here was the play of elements in harmony, of which music is the same to the ear of mortals. Yes.
They can go with the boys' house.
No, not yet. I don't even think they got up yet. So you gotta wait a few minutes.
No.
Trudy, don't start. Verse 7.
Go over the boys.
No. And now I'm pop your butt. Go on over there and sit down. And now another gateway opened amidst the stars, and a cluster star was seen approaching from the southeast. It was as a star surrounded by stars, and brighter than all the others. This was the starship of Af, the Orion chief, at sight of which all souls in the firmament turned in pride and wonder. Swift and mighty above all the countless millions of gods and goddesses assembled, he had attained in the play and management of worlds. And at, hold on, let me go back and read that last sentence again. At sight of which all souls in the firmament turned in pride and wonder. Swift and mighty above all the countless millions of gods and goddesses assembled, he had attained in the play and management of worlds. And at sight of his Etherian star, angels and gods whispered, Ah, and the magic of his name, widely known in Nirvanian fields of the emancipated heavens, spread abroad to every soul uttered off in all the regions of atmosphere and on the earth. Nearer and nearer he came, nor halted at Chinvat, the boundaries of the earth's vortex, but steadily and with power sailed on to his star, stood in the doorway of heaven, and here exalted as if to complete the immortal scene. This is amazing. As I read this and as they whisper his name, it reminds me of how when say you haven't seen um a brother or sister in a long time or a family member, and it's like when you see them, they come and it's like, oh my God, they're here. That's what this seems like every time they come back for a graduation, to graduate or to ascend to another heaven or resurrection. It seems like everybody is superly overly joyed because it's been these periods of times where they've been separated and working. Yes, babe. You can have that. Dad put that in last night. Okay. Nearer and nearer he came, nor halted at Chinvat, the boundary of the earth's vortex, but steadily and with power sailed on till his star stood in the doorway of heaven, and here halted as if to complete the immortal scene. But a moment more, and all the avalanche of the glorious worlds around moved onward toward the earth, and surrounding it on every side, and the star of Ah making headway for Horrid, even to the throne of God. This was the morning of the third day and tide of Dan, in which there were still 4 days left. But now the marshals took their parts. First, Suji, chief over all the rest, from the throne of God, cried out, All hail, O Af, son of Jehovah. And the words were caught up on every side and uttered in one breath around the world. Yet nearer and nearer, gathered in the great starships and son of Huatan, to even like a net, they joined and filled the earth's atmosphere in the east and west and north and south and below and above on every side. Bella, turn it down. And the words of the marshals, all hail, O Av, son of Jehovah, went like an echo over all the heavens. Thank you. Then Av's fleet drew near, and he and his host alighted, and he ascended the throne, saluting, saying, all hail, O Neph, God of heaven and earth. And this was also uttered by the millions of hosts, whereupon the signs and ceremonies of the gods were briefly concluded, and a recreation of 3 days proclaimed. And the angels' hosts came forth out of their ships, or by the endless chain, sped to any quarters of the earth they desired to visit. And for 3 days and nights, the visitors dwelt on the earth and in the lower atmosphere, inspecting how the earth was made, its land and water, its mountains and valleys, its beasts of prey and beasts of burden, its birds and fish, and above all, its mortal people and spirits who lingered about the earth, the great storytellers who knew no higher heaven. And then they surveyed atmosphere and the works of God and his lords, their nurseries, hospitals, factories, schools, and colleges. And on the fourth day, the marshals called to order. And so great was the discipline of the host and the arrangement of the starships that in a moment of time, order reigned amongst all these countless millions of people. Now, during the recreation, the chiefs from many worlds and gods and goddesses mingled together and exchanged their varied experience in the wide regions of Jehovah's universe, of the management of both corporal and Essene worlds, and of the cosmology of Etherian planets, and the surveying of roadways, and of turning worlds from their orbitic course or changing their axic rotation, and of the deliverance of millions of souls into the Geayan field, and of the creation of new corporal worlds, and the dissolution of others, and the gathering together of the spirits disinherited, and of their final resurrection. Neither seemed there any end to Jehovah's universe, where such wonders go onward forever. When order was restored, God commanded Waka to rise to be anointed, and God said, in thy name, O Jehovah, I anoint this, thy son, God of heaven and earth, for the next 400 years. Guide him in wisdom and love, O Father. And God gathered from the abundance of ethic. He made a crown and placed it on Waka's head, saying, hail God of heaven and earth, Jehovah's son. This was shouted by the host. And then God took off the triangle, the samgan, the heirloom of the gods, excuse me, the heirloom of the gods of the red star, the earth, and hung it on Waka's neck, saying, take this heirloom, the symbol of the three entities in one, and wear it, the triangle, right? And wear it also reminds us of the Merkaba, right? Or the Makaba. And then God took off the triangle, the samgan, the heirloom of the gods of the red star, the earth, and hung it on Waka's neck, saying, take this heirloom, the symbol of three entities in one, and wear it for the glory of the great spirit Jehovah. To which Waka, now God, answered, thy will be done, O Father, creator and ruler over all. And all on the throne stood aside, and God, Waka, ascended the throne and sat in the midst, whereat the Isinars chanted, and the hymn sounded around the whole earth. Then Ah, son of Jehovah, spake, saying, in 400 years, O God, I will come and deliver thee and thy harvest, and thy lords and their harvest for the glory of Jehovah, the unapproachable, almighty. Amen. We might use that for today's title, the unapproachable almighty. Amen. And now I went and sat down at at the foot of the throne, according to custom, and took his hand, saying, Arise, O God, son of Jehovah, and go thy way. And Og rose up, saluting, and he and his attendants departed and entered his starship. The Esinars chanted, the trumpeters played, and the solemn march of Jehovah's sea of fire sounded from heaven and earth. The marshals now put the great works in order. Neph and his attendants were stationed on the right of Og in a new ship built next to him, the ships of his lords and their attendants. After them, their marshals from the different divisions of the earth and atmosphere. Next to them, the ships of the messengers, then the factors, then the nurses, then the physicians, and so on. And finally, the divisions of earth raised, who were now adjourned to the sun avalanche, being of the same rank. And these comprise the harvest of Neph for Jehovah's emancipated realms, and the number of souls exceeded all other harvests raised up from the earth. And now had come the time for the ascent. And Og said, Give us of thy power, O Jehovah. And his words were echoed in all places in heaven and on earth. The plateau trembled and oscillated. Again, Og said, Of thy power, O Jehovah, arise, O heaven, arise, O heaven. And the plateau of the sphere started from their foundations and slowly moved back and outward from the earth. The Esinars played the march. The Etherians tore off strips of fabric and threw them down in Horrid, and then formed flowers and leaves and perfumed them and cast them out to fall in the lower heavens. Outward and outward, the Etherian world moved and moved, and then parted the breath of the earth, and then rose slowly upward. Presently, it turned on its own axis and was as yet one entire world. But with its rotation, the different stars began to individualize and separate, save the harvest of Neph, which was the central figure, led onward and upward by Aph, the son of the Great Spirit. Faster and faster rose the glorious scene, and more awful and sparkling with splendor, nor could one from Horrid scarce look upon the dazzling light, but higher it rose and onward toward its far off destiny, till it disappeared in the firmament above. And the last chapter, which is 11 verses, is chapter 17. Now was atmosphere like a new heaven, stripped of visitors and ready to resume labor after a glorious festival. So God at once dispatched all hands to their places, and the factories, schools, and colleges, nurseries, and hospitals were once more alive with willing workers. For 400 years, God reigned in heaven, and his lords under him, and the second Dan of Og fell upon earth and heaven. So God appointed Anon as his successor, and now Og and his attendants came to deliver God, his lords, and people prepared for their resurrection up into Ethera. You see how this keeps happening every few generations, or so we just say few generations, where when they have a resurrection, earth is still going on. Souls are harvested, but earth continues on until it doesn't, until the school closes, right? But this has been going on forever and will continue to go on. This is a school forever, right? Okay. For 400 years, God reigned in heaven, and his lords under him, and the second Dan of Og fell upon earth and heaven. So God appointed Anon and his successor, and now Og and his attendants came to deliver God and his lords. Yes, babe.
I just opened it.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Who did it?
I did it. So God appointed Anon and his successor, and now Og and his attendants came to deliver God, his lords, and people prepared for their resurrection up into Ethera. And the number of Jehovah's harvest was 1,000 million souls. And God, Anon, reigned his time, and his lords under him, and they were also delivered by Af, but by proxy. And the harvest of Jehovah was 800 million souls. And his successor, God of Horeb and Atmosphere, and his lords fulfilled their dan, and they and their harvests were delivered by the proxy of Af also. And the number of souls delivered was 600 million. And Jehovah commanded Af to commit Atmosphere and the earth to the successors of Razan of Garowista and elms of Ethera, phalanx of 80 Ardoth. And the next harvest of God and his lords was 200 million souls. After that, the earth passed into the Aji of Erkstan for 800 years, and the light of the upper heaven was lost to earth and atmosphere, so that there was no harvest for the Etherian realms. And because of the darkness and atmosphere, it began to fall in Hada, and the seven entities of Tetrax took root in Horeb and overspread the dominions of God and his lords. And many in heaven rose up and proclaiming themselves gods or lords, obtained followers, some to the extent of 3 million souls. And these false gods made slaves of their followers, exacting service, and in lieu giving pitiful homes and regimen, and by the labor of their slaves, embellishing their mansions and cities in Hada. Jehovah had said of old, before mortals, I keep death forever present, that they may not forget the change from the corporal to spirit life. Otherwise, they would dispute it possible in my hands for these things to be. But my resurrections in heaven are far apart, and the inhabitants thereof lose faith in those above them. Through faith is all power and glory attained. Therefore have I exacted that angels cultivate faith in the next resurrection. But during the last 1,000 years in atmosphere, there being no resurrections to Ethera, many fell into disbelief of the emancipated heavens, and so set about building up heavenly kingdoms on their own account and for their own glory. And in order to have exalted kingdoms, they sent their slaves back to mortals to inspire them with the glory God, of their false gods' kingdoms, that others in turn might become slaves also. So confusion began in heaven again, and it reacted on mortals through the angel's presence, and war and misery overspread the nations and tribes of men on earth. Thus ended the cycle of Ah, being 2,600 years after the flood, and 3,600 years in all. End of the book of Ah, son of Jehovah. And the last reference is reference 8, and it says, thus ended the cycle of Af's Ark of Noah, being 2,600 years after the flood, and which was 3,600 years in all. And that, my beautiful people, is the end of the book of Af. So what happens is tomorrow, girl, move that. So tomorrow, let me put my note in here. We go back, right? So we got to backtrack and go back to the beginning of the book of Af. Better watch out. And we got to start in the lower portion, which is the Lord's first book. Yes,
I can end it.
No, I'm not about to end it. Back up. So we go all the way back to page 59. Put my mark in here. Go back to page 59. The Lord's first book. All right. And this gives, when you remember, the book above is what's happening in the heavens above, and the lower book is giving an account of what's happening below. So now that we read the account of everything that happened above, when we start back here tomorrow, everything is going to coincide with what we just read was happening in the heavens. But this is going to be the account that was happening on the earth. It says, being contemporaneous with the book of Af, son of Jehovah, and as which reason one book is placed above the other, right? So all the way through the whole book, that's how we're going to read the chapters. When we get to it, when the book is split in half like this, we can clearly see it's two different books. You read all the way through all the chapters of the first book of the heavenly account. Once we get the heavenly account, we go back and we read through the earthly account, what was happening simultaneously with what was happening during that time in heaven, right? All right. Karen, shalom, shalom. So we'll pause right here. We got 10 minutes left. We'll get in 10 minutes on the meditation book. Hop on over here to page 114. Okay. So we're talking about the states of consciousness, right? So we're going to pick back up with the goddess Hathor, Hat-Hor, or Hetheru. Okay. So we'll probably be able to get through this little paragraph and the next one, the eye as a metaphor, right? We was talking about the eye. But it's talking about the states of consciousness, but it's continuing on the conversation we was having about the eye. Okay. Page 114 down at the bottom, the goddess Hathor or Hetheru. In a text from the temple at Deir al-Medina, Hetheru is referred to as having the same divine attributes as Heru. She is described as the golden one and the queen of the gods, her shrines being even more numerous than those of Heru. Hetheru or Het-Heru, meaning the house of Heru and the house above, sky, became identified like Heru with the salvation of the initiate. In the Egyptian book of the coming forth by day, she is the one who urges the initiate to do battle with the monster Apep so as not to lose his or her heart as she cries out, "Take your armor." In a separate papyrus, the initiate is told that she, Hetheru, is the one who, quote, will make your face perfect among the gods. She will open your eyes so that you may see every day. She will make your legs able to walk with ease in the underworld. Her name is Hetheru, Lady of Amenta, end quote. Hetheru represents the power of the Ra, or the Supreme Spirit. Therefore, associating with her implies coming into contact with the boundless source of energy which sustains the universe. Making contact with Hetheru implies the development of inner willpower, which engenders clarity of vision that will lead to the discovery of what is righteous and what is unrighteous. A mind which is constantly distracted. Bella, what are you doing? Don't do that. Remove that. Don't do that again. Go put it where it belongs. A mind which is constantly distracted and beset with fetters, anger, hatred, greed, conceit, covetousness, lust, selfishness, etc., cannot discern the optimal course in life. It becomes weak willed because the negative emotions and feelings drain the mental energy. Thus, unrighteous actions and sinful thoughts arise, and the weak mind cannot resist them. Unrighteous actions lead to adverse situations, and adverse situations lead to pain and sorrow in life. See the Assyrian resurrection and Egyptian Tantra Yoga for more on Hetheru and the teachings of Egyptian Tantra Yoga. Let me read that again. The whole paragraph is good. Listen. Hetheru represents the power of the Ra, or the Supreme Spirit, or spirit we just call Yah, right? Therefore, associating with her implies coming in contact with the boundless source of energy which sustains the universe. Making contact with Hetheru implies the development of inner willpower, which engenders clarity of vision that will lead to the discovery of what is righteous and what is unrighteous. A mind which is constantly distracted and beset with fetters, anger, hatred, greed, conceit, covetousness, lust, selfishness, cannot discern the optimal course in life. It becomes weak willed because the negative emotions and feelings drain the mental energy. Thus, unrighteous actions and sinful thoughts arise, and the weak mind cannot resist them. Unrighteous actions lead to adverse situations, and adverse situations lead to pain and sorrow in life. See the Assyrian resurrection and the Egyptian Tantra Yoga for more on Hetheru and the teachings of Egyptian Tantra Yoga. In mystical philosophy, in mystical philosophy, the eyes are understood to be the seat of waking consciousness. When you wake someone, you look at their eyes to see if they are awake. The right eye, in particular, is seen as the dynamic aspect of consciousness, and Hetheru, as the right eye of Ra, symbolizes exactly that concept. God, Ra, has projected consciousness, the I, into creation, and in so doing, the I, or waking consciousness, becomes involved in various activities within the world of time and space. Similarly, the human soul has projected its image into time and space, the ocean of creation, and in doing so, the psychophysical self has emerged and human experience is possible. From this process arises the possibility of karmic involvement as well as ignorance and egoism. The next section, and after this little section, which is two small paragraphs, we're going to end. We should be right at the hour mark. And it's called The Three States of Consciousness. The I as a metaphor. The I, coming into physical form as the lynx or lioness, is a symbol of human existence. It represents the human soul. In the same way that the I is a ray or projection of Ra, the supreme being, the human soul is a ray or projection of the supreme being. Thus, the plight of the I is a parable which the sages of ancient Egypt composed in order to explain human existence and to impart the knowledge of spiritual enlightenment for spiritual aspirations. I'm sorry, for spiritual aspirants. Yes, you can wear it. You got to turn it around. In this context, it is similar in most respects to other in initiatic. Yeah, yeah. In this context, it is similar in most respects to other initiatic scriptures, especially those from India, the Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita, and Yoga Vasita. The teachings are given through three main characters in the story. These are Ra, Hathor, and Jehudi. Hathor displays three distinct states of consciousness through the myth. In so doing, the myth outlines the three important states of religion and religious practice in a highly artistic and entertaining manner. True religious practice is made up of three stages of spiritual practice, as previously discussed. Therefore, it requires three stages of teaching or initiatic education. The first stage is composed of the events of the myth. This includes the events of the story, the characters and or deities within the story, the plot, and basic themes within the story. The second stage is the ritual. Ritual includes observances, ceremonies, customs, etc., related to the myth. The third level of religion is the mystical experience. This third level is the true objective of all religious practices. Clearly, a lot of these religions do not get past the first stage, right? Which is just the stories and myths. They can't even get through them. They fighting over them. The third level of religion is the mystical experience. This third level is the true objective of all religious practices. Without this stage, religion becomes dry and ineffective. When people only practice the first and second levels of religion, the practice often becomes personal and egoistic, as well as dogmatic and subjective. This is the breeding ground for conflict between religions, as well as misunderstanding about what true religious practice is all about. And that is where we'll pause at the 1 hour mark today. Beautiful people. I'm on time. And we finished reading that other book. Baby girl, yes.
You hear me talking to you?
Yes, I hear you talking to me. Don't you hear me talking to them? You trying to talk to me while I'm talking to them. You know, every morning I talk to them until I get finished talking to them about the hour mark, but yet you want to still interrupt me while I'm talking to them. And it don't be about anything.
It makes you in the video.
All right, beautiful
And
people.
I'm about to get you right now.
Let me put this page number 114 to 115. Okay, feel your forehead. Okay. All right, very good. All right, beautiful people. Thank y'all for hanging out today. It is Tuesday, May the 10th, 2022, day 104 of year 4, reading through the books of the law and the prophets, another 4-year consecutive day count, day 1122. Today we finished reading all the rest of the, was it the book of Af? Was it the book of Af? I forgot already. Yes, the book of Af, right? Starting on page 59, going all the way to page 83. And then we read one page in a meditation book. It's page 114 to 115. No, I wrote that down wrong. Yeah, that's right. 1.5 pages. Page 114 to 115. All right, beautiful people. Thank y'all for hanging out today. What girl, finish doing that over there first. Okay, yeah. I'm gonna let you end it. Okay, back up. Okay, well, I'm about to end it, sis. All right. Thank y'all for hanging out. May y'all continue to bless you in all that you do. May everything that you touch, may it turn to gold like it did for King Midas. But don't get caught up by the things. Continue using your blessings to bless others as Yah continues to bless you on a daily basis and lead us all into truth as well as in and by his spirit. All right, beautiful people. I love y'all. See y'all back here tomorrow morning, bright and early. Yes, we could be touched together. See y'all back here tomorrow morning, bright and early, 7:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Peace. Got on my Gayanami earrings, which means God is supreme, or Yah is supreme. That's what it means, y'all. Gayanami. Yah is supreme. Gayanami. Yah is supreme. Go ahead and end it, Tootie. Facebook didn't get the rest of that, but she ended it right when I was saying it. Go ahead, end stream, girl. Bye, y'all. Wrong button.
This?
Yep.